as part of many of the research projects that we're doing with the work that we're doing with teachers, we were doing a particular study with a group of high school students and wanted to just kind of give you a brief look at what we were doing there. So one of our research questions was to explore the connections between instructional conversations and social emotional learning, because although this pedagogical model was created to develop academic learning and linguistic competency, if you will, we started seeing a lot of social emotional impacts. You know, kids were becoming more self-regulatory. They were becoming more self-reflective. They were having better relationships with each other. They were starting to use the tools that they were learning in class out on the playground, you know, and saying, I respectfully disagree with you. I had the ball first. You know, those kinds of things. And they were interacting in all kinds of, they were interacting in all kinds of different ways. And we thought, oh no, this is really something we need to explore, right? So we were working with a group of high school students. As I said, this is a high school honors English class, but in spite of the fact that it was an honors English class, it was a highly diverse high school. This particular class had about 32 students, 28 of which were all multilingual learners. And they were, the lesson that we were videotaping and then interviewing the students about afterwards was them having to look at rhetorical devices and rhetorical arguments that two particular authors were using and to compare them. So they were looking at a letter from Benjamin Banneker to Thomas Jefferson, and they were where he was pleading with, making an argument to Thomas Jefferson that he should apply the concepts of equality and liberty to all people, including the African American population in the United States at the time, and then looking at the Declaration of Independence, which Thomas Jefferson had written, where he describes these concepts of equality and liberty and, you know, the rights of all men. And, you know, so these students were interrogating these documents, looking at the rhetorical devices that these two authors had used, and they had to pull through and say, these were what they did, and compare them and then say who did a better job, right? So this is a really, really heavy lift. What we did then is we were looking at both what they were doing in their class, but then also in an interview afterwards where we asked them, what do you think about this kind of learning compared to the kind of learning where you're just sitting in a classroom and you're receiving the information? And then we did a thematic analysis and a discourse analysis of what they said. And we used deductive coding using these codes, which come from the CASEL framework for social emotional learning. And these were this is just a visual representation of how those fell out with these particular competencies. And as you can see, there are 5 competencies that CASEL has defined. And I'm just going to give you a simple example of what this looks like in the data. So for the competency of social awareness, this was one of the quotes that we ended up coding as demonstrating within the competency of social awareness, this particular indicator of social awareness, which was understanding the influences of organizations and systems on behavior. And this is what one of the students said. Again, this was an interview with 4 girls in this class. These 4 girls, two identified as African American, two identified as Latina, one as Afro-Latina, one identified as African American, and one as white. And these girls were working together in a collaborative conversation-based group where they were working on this concept and had to together decide on these things. And this is one of the things that the student said afterwards when we asked her, how do you feel in this class compared to other classes? And this student who was responding, student 4, was the student who was identified as white, and she said, I feel like like the 4 of us, we kind of have like a hive mind at this point. I feel like we wouldn't have been like close friends or like even like close classmates if we were in like a different class structure. I don't really know people in those classes, so I feel like it brought us together in a way that may not have happened. And I think that kind of self-awareness, that social awareness, definitely, she clearly has an understanding of how these different structures impact her interaction with other people and impact her interaction with the content itself. And so we say, you know, why do we care? Why does this matter? How does that social, emotional awareness impact their content understanding? Well, this is another quote from what these girls were saying. And as you see, this is student 2, student 4, and student 3, or student 1, excuse me. 3 of the students who were in this interview are responding and they're interacting with one another. And one of them says, I understand it, the lesson, better because of so many other people explaining it to me. It was like, oh, it's that simple. Oh yeah, like a light bulb. So that's why we do it.